But I have a hard time believing I need others. I do. There's a test out that we've used for recruiting called the FIRO-B. It shows where you are on a number of things, but one of them is inclusion and exclusion. How much you want to include people or be included by people in events or parties. How much you want to exclude people or be excluded from events or parties. I've taken the test several times, and you get 0, it means you're totally exclusive. You don't want to be around anybody. 10 is you want to be around everybody all the time. And, you know, it's a continuum. When I've done it 3 times, and I come out about the same, which is a 0, 0, which is really, I should be in counseling, because that, you know, I'm your extreme loner by personality bent. Now, by the way, these aren't good or bad. They're just kind of how we're wound. So my felt need is to be alone. Partly it's because I'm with people so much, but I really get joy by doing that. That means I don't want to have a party. And it means if you have one, I don't want you to invite me. I mean, that's what it means. That's kind of my felt need. I can travel by myself over the years, and myself, and I have a great time together. I don't tend to get lonely. But I also know that I desperately need people in my life. It is not a felt need to have people in my life, but it's a real need. Mary, my wife, one time came back from a conference, and she was on a board of this group, and she had some questions. She said, "Can we go out to lunch and talk about them?" And I said, "Sure." And she started asking me some questions, and I started to answer her questions. And she lovingly patted me on the hand and said, "Honey, I don't want you to answer my questions." And what went through my mind was, I didn't say this, but what went through my mind was, well, why in the world would you ask questions if you don't want me to answer them? I thought, I'm pretty good at answering questions, so I can help you. But she didn't want to be fixed. She didn't actually want my response. She wanted me to understand, and she wanted to communicate. And I knew that. So I spent the next hour and a half or 2 hours listening, and I asked a few questions like, when you say this, do you mean this, or can you help me understand this further? But I made no declarative statements, which, if you knew me, would know is foreign to my DNA. But when we got done, she leaned across the table, grabbed my cheeks in her hand, pulled me close, planted a romantic kiss on my lips, and said, "Honey, honey, thank you. This is the best discussion we've ever had." Yeah. I was obviously speechless. And I said, "Thank you." Because we all want to be heard, right? And we need to. God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. That ought to tell you how much time we spend listening versus speaking. I was speaking to a group of business leaders, about 800 leaders in Kuala Lumpur a number of years ago, and they represented 8,000 that we had at a convention where I was speaking a little bit later. And I was talking to these leaders about forgiveness as the foundation for being leaders. After I got done, I brought the leader up right next to me, and I said, "Well, does this stuff apply to you guys?" And he goes, oh yeah, man, it really, man, we need all of this, everything you shared. I said, "Well, great." I said, "How about you personally? Did anything stand out?" And he said, "Oh yeah, this idea of asking for forgiveness, we don't do that in our culture. That's shaming, you know. It's like you lose your honor if you ask for forgiveness." And he said, "I've never had anyone ask for my forgiveness." He said, "But I need to do it right now." I said, "Right now? Right here?" He goes, "Yeah." So I said, "Okay, go for it." So he calls a guy, Kamal. He says, "Kamal, and he's reading from his notes. He said, "When we started this business," he said, "I stole some of your people." He said, "I was wrong to have done that. Now I realize how wrong it was. And I've never told you that before." And he said, "I'm sorry I did that and caused you to feel embarrassment and hurt, and not to mention lost a lot of money and reputation and everything else." And he said, "I'm going to work hard not to ever do this again." And then he said, "Ron, I can't read in the 4th thing. What do I say?" I say, just say, "Will you forgive me and shut up?" So I looked at him and said, "Will you forgive me and shut up?" I said, "No, you don't say shut up." I said, "You just say, 'Will you forgive me?' and then you shut up." Got it. So he said, "Will you forgive me?" And so I said, "Kamal, it's on the table. What do you say?" And he said, jumped on the table, his table, and he said, "Absolutely." You could tell just like that, the spirit or the key of that organization change. By the way, in the days to come, they fully reconciled, and even financially, and it totally changed the dynamic and the growth and the return on investment of a business. There was a book written years ago by a fellow by the name of Powell called "Why Am I Afraid to Tell You Who I Am?" I'm afraid to tell you who I am because if you knew who I really was, you would not like me. You would think I was a rat. None of us are so hot. I mean, really. I almost never speak without sharing a recent failure of mine for two reasons. One is it saves me trying to come up with other illustrations. I have so many of them. And the second reason is people hear that and they go, well, you know, well, that's good to hear. He's like me. He's not so hot, but he seems to be doing all right. You know, maybe there's some hope for me. And when we try to communicate that everything's all together, like, it's perfect, you know, people start to lose hope that they can actually grow and develop.